So what could you say that you felt that Superman stood for, or stands for?
Well, exactly the motto that they've used on the television show: truth, justice, and the American way.
I know I'm talking about Superman, and I know I'm a little bit late to the game, but I have a bit of a different take on this one, so I wanted to really gather my thoughts and wait until this whole thing kind of cooled down before I felt like I could speak on the topic intelligently. Now, for those of you who may not know about the controversy surrounding Superman Red and Blue issue number 1, there's a panel in there that heavily implies that Superman is sexually violated and taken advantage of in a Lubanian death camp. The panel shows a beaten down and broken Clark Kent in an exposed and vulnerable position, where he says, "Every day they would drag me into the interview room. Every day they would restrain me in a way that left me exposed and vulnerable. And every day for 8 months, they did things to me." Now, the writer for this comic, John Ridley, who is not in fact a comic book author at all, but a screenplay writer for Hollywood, talks at length about the book in an interview that we will get to a bit later. In that interview, there was actually no mention of an explicit intention to have Superman raped in an internment camp, but he does say, quote, "Even though we see him as Superman, he needed a moment where he couldn't just move on from it." So I think after hearing that quote, it's pretty safe to say that that's exactly what he was going for.
That is a terrible business tactic!
Real quick, if you are enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit the like button. It would really mean a lot to me. So there are 5 things that I want to go over in this video. First and foremost, why the hell are we just now talking about this now? The comic was published in March of last year. That means that this book has been out for 10 months. At that time, I didn't even have a channel, but you bet your ass I would have been talking about it then. So why now? Because people don't actually read comic books. Because if they were, people would have been talking about this issue when it first came out. Or it was of such little consequence that when people actually read it, they became apathetic towards it and literally probably just threw it in the trash. Now, there were actually a few channels that did cover it and talked about how awful it was, so, I mean, kudos to them. But for everyone else, it felt like this comic book just came out of nowhere within the past week because the news emerged when it hit Twitter, not when people read the book 10 months ago. Which is just further proof that people are not reading comic books. And if they are, they have become completely apathetic towards them and they aren't speaking out about them. Number 2, why is this a larger issue in the news when literally 4 issues later, Daniel Warren Johnson comes along and writes Superman in his true form and true character?
And blows everybody's nips off with his big brains.
Everyone keeps saying that they want to see the classic Superman back, right? The Blue Boy Scout, the Man of Steel, the moralistic, ethical, and hopeful hero that we have always longed for. Well, guess what? He came back in issue number 5 with Daniel Warren Johnson writing him, but no one was talking about that, were they? Now, I actually posted a video on that comic issue and why I thought it was the best comic book of 2021. So if you are interested in watching that, you can watch it here. But the sad fact is that outrage, anger, and political intrigue will always be more popular than positivity. Number 3, now this might be controversial, but I am actually more upset about the changing of Superman's motto than the degeneracy of this specific comic book. Now, why is that? Both are done with intentionality and malice, so why don't they bother me on a similar level? It's because in this book, this doesn't represent Superman at all. It doesn't represent him or his character, and it doesn't change anything about him. This was written by an angry, insecure man trying to utilize Superman as his political mouthpiece, and was overseen by a negligent, incompetent, and tone-deaf editor who didn't realize that this was probably a bad idea.
Put some thought on that one. Consider that. Yeah, man. Give that some thought.
So the fact of the matter is, this book will be forgotten by time. However, when the chief creative officer at DC announces to the world that Superman will have a new motto that is inherently hateful towards his American heritage, it's a little bit different than when some troll writes an 8-page short story in a comic book.
Choices should be celebrated, not criticized. Yeah, not criticized.
Not criticized at all.
In fact, anyone criticizing the film should be silenced by force.
Number 4, the article. Bounding into Comics journalist Spencer Braculi released an incredibly well-written and intriguing article discussing the comic, its history, and an interview with the writer John Ridley. Now, I would highly encourage you guys to go take a look at this article and support the guys over at Bounding into Comics. They do an incredible job over there, and they do a deep dive into the content of where this story originates from back in 1970's World's Finest issues 192 and 193. But just to save us some time, I'll go over just the interview and read off a few of John Ridley's quotes. Starting with, after being asked why he wrote the story and why he had this particular take on it, John mentions that he was never a fan of having a sense of false jeopardy. He says, quote, "You know Bruce is not going away, Clark is not going away, Diana is not going away, Oliver is not going away. They just can't, you know? People love them. They sell comic books, they sell t-shirts, they sell mugs." Yeah, John, you're 100% right. They aren't going away, and people do love them. That's because they will live on forever in our hearts. But that doesn't give you the right to hypothetically have your way with them just because they are never going away. With that knowledge and understanding of how important and how powerful these characters are to the fans, you would think that one would have some sort of reverence towards these characters instead of raping them just for the sake of your own story. John then goes on to give his true motivation for why he wrote this book, saying, quote, "My perspective about the prevailing culture in this country is that when bad things happen to people who are traditionally marginalized, there's this feeling of, okay, we get it, it was wrong. Let's just move on. You can see that just over the last year or even this year with the things that happened on January 6th, there are a lot of people who are like, okay, yeah, we get it. It's bad. Let's just move on." But it's like, no, you can't just move on. There are things that need to be worked through and things that need to be acknowledged and dealt with. Okay, how about starting with the acknowledgement and dealing with the fact that you literally anally raped Superman in an internment camp? Do you not see the irony here? People who read the comic are going to say, okay, yeah, we get it, it's bad, let's just move on. But by your own admission, you believe that things need to be acknowledged and dealt with. So that's why I'm making this video, because this is my way of acknowledging and dealing with the fact that you sexually violated one of the world's greatest heroes and pop culture icons of all time.
It feels like within the last 5 years, all companies have just been like, it's been good too long.
And finally, number 5. Where is the line? Will there ever be a point in comics where something so heinous or so upsetting happens that all sides come together and objectively agree that a line was crossed or that something went too far? Whether you're black or white or Republican or Democrat, will there ever be a point where that happens? At what point do we all collectively say, okay, I've had enough? Wow, well that was a much longer video than anticipated, but hopefully y'all enjoyed my take on things. And hey, listen, let me know in the comment section below what you think of this comic book and where you think it stands in the grand scheme of things. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.